Hey guys, welcome to Chapter 8, Matter and Energy in the Environment. This chapter we're going to be asking and answering the question, how do non-living and living things interact in the environment? So the first thing that we do when we kick off a chapter is to look at our Get Ready to Read. So today you are going to be looking at and completing the left-hand side, agreeing or disagreeing with these statements. So the air you breathe is mostly oxygen. Agree or disagree? Living things are made mostly of water. Carbon, nitrogen, and other types of matter are used by living things over and over again. Clouds are made of water vapor. The sun is the source for all energy used by living things on Earth. All living things get their energy from eating other living things. So, before we get started, do you agree or disagree? So you will do what you've done before, write agree or disagree in that line, and then file it away for after we finish this chapter, okay? So how we are going to be doing things to this chapter is that I'm going to be reading from the reading essentials for each one of these lessons. So I would split screen. So what I have here is your outline notes and your reading essential. So I would get that set up this way as well, all right, so that we can read and stop and fill out our outline notes as we go. So this particular lesson is going to be concentrating on your abiotic factors. So you're going to learn that your abiotic factors, A meaning without, bio meaning life. So these are all going to be non-living. So what are the non-living factors in our ecosystem? Okay, so what is an ecosystem? I'm going to go ahead and change so I got a highlighter ready. All organisms need both living and non-living things to survive. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. That is a very, very important detail. Bees help the flowering plant reproduce. The flowers have nectar that the bees use to make honey. Flowers and bees, like all living organisms, also need non-living things to survive, such as sunlight, air, and water. An ecosystem is all the living and non-living things in a given area. An ecosystem can come in all sizes. An entire forest can be an ecosystem. A rotting log, a pond, a desert, an ocean, and your backyard are all ecosystems. Biotic factors are living things in an ecosystem. Living things in an ecosystem. So we are going to highlight that and then circle that living. So plants and animals are biotic factors. So what I want you to be thinking about is that biotic is going to be anything that is alive or was once alive or came from something that was alive. Like a leaf that is on the tree, that's a biotic factor. And that same leaf in the fall, when it's on the ground, that is still a biotic factor. I'm going to change my highlighter here. An abiotic factor are non-living things in an ecosystem. Sunlight, water, rocks are abiotic factors. And we're going to look at the abiotic factors in a little bit more detail a little bit later in this lesson. Biotic and abiotic factors, they all depend on each other. We're going to be looking at that through this entire chapter as well as the next chapter, chapter 9. If one factor in an ecosystem is disturbed, other parts of the ecosystem are affected. During times of water shortages or severe droughts, many fish in rivers and lakes will die. Animals that eat fish will have to find other food. This abiotic factor, lack of water, affects the biotic factors in the ecosystem, such as the fish and the other animals that feed on the fish. Okay, so that finishes up the first part here. What is an ecosystem? So I'll give you a moment to fill out your outline notes. Please pause this video if you need to fill out your outline notes for this very first section. What is an ecosystem? All living and non-living things in an area make up the living things in a system are so living things. Sunlight and temperature are examples of the non-living factors or blank in an ecosystem. Okay, so what are the non-living parts of an ecosystem? So I'm going to scoot this over, scoot this up. Okay, so now we are on this section here. What are the non-living parts of an ecosystem? Think about the ecosystem around you. How do the abiotic factors, remember that abiotic factors are the ones that are not alive, in your ecosystem affect you? You need sunlight for warmth. You need air to breathe. You need water to drink. So all of those are sunlight, our air, our water. Those are all abiotic factors. They are not alive. So without sunlight, air, water, and soil being another one of abiotic factors, you would not have food. In the figure below, all the non-living parts of the ecosystem affect all the living. So we'll actually come back to this photograph a little bit later after we look at the individual abiotic factors. All right? So continue to scroll up. What I've done here with these numbers is I have correlated that to our outline notes here. So we are now on B, right here. What are the non-living parts of an ecosystem? So number one, we're going to find that in the sun here. Almost all of the energy on Earth comes from the sun. Almost all. We're going to learn a little bit later in this chapter, or next chapter actually, that some of the energy for things on Earth come from a process called chemosynthesis, and that's way down deep in the middle, deep down in the bottom of the ocean where there is no sun. So anyway, we can't say that all of the energy, it's going to be almost all. But really, almost all of our energy on Earth comes from the sun. The sun provides warmth and light. Many plants use sunlight and make food, as you will read about later. So this is called photosynthesis, right? Many plants use sunlight to make food. That's photosynthesis. We're going to learn about that a little bit later. Oops, ran out of room there. Okay, so sunlight is an abiotic factor. The sun also affects two other abiotic factors, the climate and the temperature. So we're going to highlight that. That's important. The sun affects two other abiotic factors, climate and temperature. So almost all of the energy on Earth comes from the sun, and the plants are going to use that sun through a process of photosynthesis to make food. We need that food to be able to eat. Sun also affects the climate and the temperature. So you are going to find that right here. Here is our number one. Almost all energy on Earth originally came from the sunlight is used by plants to make what? Two other abiotic factors that are affected by sunlight are temperature and blank. Okay, so I need you to fill out these notes. Pause this video if you need to. Alrighty, let's move on to climate. Change our colors here a little bit. Polar bears live in the Arctic. The Arctic has a cold, dry climate. Climate describes average weather conditions in an area over time. Weather conditions include temperature, moisture, and wind. So what is the temperature? What is the amount of moisture in the air? And then wind, yes or no. Okay, the graph below shows such factors. Climate is an abiotic factor that affects where organisms can live. A desert climate is dry and often hot. A plant that needs a lot of water could not survive in a desert. A cactus can live in the desert because it can survive with little water. So we'll talk about that a little later, that will have adaptations. Animals and plants have adaptations to be able to live in the area, in the ecosystem best suited for it. So we would not be able to put like a polar bear in the desert because it is too hot. And the polar bear does not have the adaptations to live in a dry, hot environment. All right, so there we have number 2 on your outline notes. So read through that and fill them in. Stop this video if you need. Okay, temperature. Okay, is it hot or cold where you live? Temperatures on Earth are different every day. Temperature is another abiotic factor that affects where organisms can survive. Some organisms, such as tropical birds, do well in hot temperatures. Other organisms, such as polar bears, do well in cold temperatures. Tropical birds do not live in cold ecosystems. Polar bears do not live in warm ecosystems. So the temperature is going to affect not only the plant, but the animals that are available, that are suited to live in that area. So go ahead and fill out number 3 here for your outline notes. Water. All life on Earth must have water. In fact, most organisms are made mostly of water. That's interesting, isn't it? All organisms need water to grow and reproduce. Because of this, every ecosystem must contain some water to support life. Now, we're going to have plants and animals that don't require very much water, but everything is going to require some water. So go ahead and fill out number 4 here on your outline notes. Whoops. Okay, atmosphere. The atmosphere is the layer of gas that surrounds Earth. Oh, I did not want to do that, did I? The atmosphere is the layer of gas that surrounds Earth. The atmosphere is an abiotic factor that is necessary for life. You interact with the atmosphere every time you take a breath. Let's mark that. That's important. The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and oxygen, as shown in the circle graph below. The atmosphere provides oxygen that living things breathe. It also protects them against certain harmful rays from the sun. So those UV rays coming down. So you need to know the percents here. So we have 78% nitrogen. So that's going to be N sub 2. We have 21% oxygen, and then 1% trace gas. So as far as your outline notes, that's going to be number 5 over here. So fill out your outline notes, please. So the last abiotic factor that we have is soil. Soil is an abiotic factor. Oh, I needed to do the highlighter again, didn't I? Sorry about that, guys. Soil is an abiotic factor. Soil is made up of bits of rock and water and air and minerals and the remains of once living things. Soil is important for growing crops. It provides water and nutrients for plants. Soil is also important as a home to many organisms such as insects, bacteria, and fungi. Factors such as water, soil type, and nutrients in the soil are important to organisms that live in the soil. Organisms live in the soil that suits them best. Bacteria break down dead plants and animals. This returns nutrients to the soil. We'll actually talk about that, the decomposers, a little bit later in this chapter. Earthworms and insects make small tunnels in the soil that water and air move through. Even dry soil in the desert is home to living things. So we will take a look here and fill out number 6, which is going to be your final section on your outline notes for this lesson, all right? Because if we continue to scroll, you'll see here are your vocab words. Here's your after you read. And abiotic, atmosphere, biotic, climate, and ecosystem are the 5 words for this lesson. So make sure that you are getting your vocab assignment filled out as well, okay? So let's scroll up and take a look at this picture here. All right, I'm actually just going to get rid of that. All right, so we have this picture, and in this picture, you probably very easily can pick out your biotic factors, the things that are alive, right? So we've got this toucan, and we've got this bird here, and we've got all of these grasses in this tree, okay, and these animals, and this snake. Okay, these are all biotic factor. A biotic factor, a butterfly. A biotic factor is going to be able to grow, is going to be able to reproduce. That's going to be our definition. Oh, I didn't see this little monkey over here, huh? Whoops, sorry about this, guys. Okay, this little monkey over here too. So biotic, living, plants, animals, bacteria. So then we are going to be thinking about the abiotic factors. And the abiotic factors are the ones that are not alive. So we might want to think about the sunlight that's producing the sunlight for photosynthesis. We've got the air that all of these organisms are breathing. We have the soil down here that the plants are using to set their roots in here. Okay, we've got the temperature, whatever the temperature that suits this particular environment, that these organisms need that particular temperature to be successful. We don't see it in this particular picture, but we know that it's probably raining at some point here. So some of our abiotic factors of sunlight and soil and atmosphere and water, all of these biotic factors are using to survive. So that is going to be an ongoing discussion that we have this chapter. So get your outline notes filled out and work on your vocab for lesson 1. Okay, see you for lesson 2 a little bit later.